It doesn't get mentioned much, but it's pretty safe to say that Paramore is one of the most celebrated rock bands of the past 20 years. Yes, they've delved into other styles of music too, like pop punk and pop music as well. But in terms of just, pure rock bands out there, they are huge, and they have really done well for themselves since those Kerrang days that put them on the map, that kind of emo era that we saw bands like My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco, etc, 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 you know the names, that really took off during that time and have since really become a nostalgic era for many people who were in their teens when these bands broke out. I was a huge fan of these guys when I was a teenager, so a lot of nostalgia for those early albums. And one of the coolest things about Paramore is that they haven't just kept to one thing. They've never been defined by one sound. Really, since 2013, they've delved into different styles, different sounds, and have really become a more respectable band for doing so, because they've actually pulled off a lot of the things that they've been trying to do. And it's cool to see that they're not just a one-trick pony, and to be quite honest with you, they are easily the most respectable band of that era now. All of those other bands coming from that time period have turned to shit. They really have. Fall Out Boy turned to shit. Friggin' Panic at the Disco turned to dog shite. And we've got Blink-182 who also turned to shite. Like, all of these bands from that era just never stood the test of time. They tried different things. They tried going into different styles. It all turned out shite. If I haven't already said that word, then I will keep saying it because it is so true. Paramore stood above the rest, gave us some of their best work later in their career as well. So they are so deserving of a video like this because they have so many good songs. The jury is still out on My Chemical Romance. We haven't had music from them anytime recently, but they may be dropping music soon. They could be turning to shite, or they could be a Paramore where they've actually, ended up staying pretty good. We shall see if they drop anything else. But otherwise, yeah, Paramore easily above all of those other bands. So it's time to talk about my favourite songs of theirs. I'm going to give you 5 honourable mentions, as I always do, and I'm going to give you the top 10. Starting with honourable mentions, I want to mention Pool. As I already said, later in their career they started putting out their best work. Pool is easily up there with one of their best tracks in my opinion. I want to mention Renegade as well, one of their most underrated tracks, which was from that little 3 singles series that they did, the Singles Club. Really, really super underrated, this song. I think it's a really spunky little rock track. Will not be the only song to appear from Brand New Eyes, but I do want to mention Ignorance, one of their hardest hitting rock tracks. Really, really good track, this one. It's really sharp and snappy chorus as well. Then I also want to mention Pressure, which is from their first album, but has still stood the test of time and is easily one of the highlights from that album too. And my final and 5th honourable mention, which just misses out on the top 10, is actually from their most recent album, Running Out of Time. Definitely one of the funkiest little grooves that they've got going in all of their discography. Great track, this one. Maybe with more time this could have made it into the top 10. This album is very new and very fresh. As you can tell, this video is coming quite soon after that album, so maybe with more time you can look back on that album differently, and perhaps more songs could be seen differently as years have gone by, because from their first album to their recent album there's been so many years apart. But I do actually think Running Out of Time is actually up there with one of their best songs ever, which is why it gets mentioned here. So yeah, great song. Time to get into the top 10 though. Really hope you enjoyed this video. Really, really implore you to put your own top 10 in the comments. Tell me your thoughts on my top 10, how wrong I am, how right I am. And you know I'm going to be right. You should tell me I'm right. And you should also check out my Patreon as well, because you can get requests for these videos in the future. So if you want your own top 10 being requested, please go check that out, and other types of videos as well, and being part of the Discord server also. So please click the link in the description. Would be great to see you support me on there.
It's just my humble opinion, but it's one that
Okay, starting at number 10, Playing God from Brand New Eyes. A bit of an unsung hero, I feel, this one. It was a later single that came out, but honestly, it creeps up on you, this one. I actually think it's a really good track from a lyrical perspective as well. It's got that bit of like sarcastic nature, that kind of like, making you think about your own actions, which is something Paramore has always done with their lyrics. Like, there's quite a a harshness to Hayley's writing, which doesn't tend to get brought up very often. I mean, listen to a track like Ignorance, honestly, a really harshly written track, and there's always that kind of like anger that comes through in a way that's sort of like smoothed over. It's almost like passive aggressive in a way, but I actually really like it when they go into this style. And there's another track on this list that's going to come on later which really amps that up as well, which we'll get to. And I think they're always quite fun when they do this kind of thing. It's a track that makes you kind of think, you know, if you're pointing the finger, maybe start thinking about yourself as well. But otherwise, I think it's a good little pop rock track as well. Easily one of the highlights from Brand New Eyes. And yeah, I'm a fan of this one. A bit of an underrated, unsung hero for me, this one. And number 9, we've got Told You So from After Laughter. Definitely their most pop sounding album, and it provided some of their best poppy hits as well. Really like this track. I really like the way the guitars kind of interplay with the vocals on the chorus. It's a really good track that pulls in some influences from the 80s era as well. I've mentioned this before, but I feel like the Talking Heads influence, particularly on tracks like this and other tracks on this album, is pretty quite in your face and clear, and I really like it for that. And I think Told You So is a great little track. Maybe not one people go back to the most from this album, but it certainly is one for me that I go back to the most. I think this is really fun. Okay, number 8, speeding through this list, we've got Brick by Boring Brick. I really like this track. From the kind of shouty vocals that you get in the verses, which is something you don't tend to really get from Hayley. She's usually a bit more restrained than this, but I like the approach she takes on this track. And from that to the ba-da-da-da-da-da-da ending, which I think is really good. Really, really great moment of the track as well. And overall, I just think it's a really well-written track. Like, overall, you've got this message coming through from this idea of someone who is obsessed with fairy tales, but the reality kind of unfolds, and that kind of childlike nature just kind of gets buried along with the castle. I think it's a good track. It could be quite corny if it was done badly, but I don't think it is done badly, which therefore makes it really well written for me. And yeah, I just think it's one of their most musically impressive tracks. And despite the fact that there's been a few Brand New Eyes tracks on this list already, I wouldn't even say I'm the biggest fan of that album, but the highlights, the high points of the album are so excellent that it just makes it hard for me to exclude a track like this from their top 10 of all time. Going all the way back to their first album here with Emergency, which is easily the best track from the album in my opinion. Fantastic track here, which I think is inspired by her parents' divorce, which you can clearly hear through the lyrics, of course. I've seen love die way too many times when it deserves to be alive. Quite a simple line, but really effective when you think about it and the way that she sings it. There's so much passion oozing out of her voice from this track. And I think if it weren't for those emotions that are really, really seeping through, this track wouldn't even be anywhere near close to this list. I'd probably be calling it generic or something with how it's written, but it's not. There's just that fire coming through, and I think the verses, the way she sings the line and then the guitars come chugging through and it follows that pattern, I think is excellent as well. Yeah, this is easily one of their best songs, and I think a lot of the fans of Paramore could totally understand why this would be included in a list. Shout out to My Heart though, I think that's a bit of a fan favourite. I do like that track too, the closing track from this album, but no, I think Emergency is the one that stands above the rest for me. Okay, now we've got the final track featuring from Brand New Eyes on this list now at number 6, Careful. A great song, this one. A really, really great kind of really like raw and just down to the basics of rock music, this one. Like, there's no shits and giggles coming through here. There's no gimmicks or anything like that. It is just a pure, straight to the point, fiery rock track, and goddamn, it is easily one of their best songs for me. I mean, the drumming on this song, the drumming is superb. I know they've had so many band changes and dramas within the band that I think at this point, this might have been the last time we heard from this particular drummer from this album or whatever. But even still, regardless of all those things that happened within the band, the drumming on this track is absolutely excellent. It sounds so good. And the chorus, where she's just screaming her heart out. Paramore are really good when it comes to stuff like this, and I think when they lean into the heavier side of their music, they produce some fantastic songs, and this for me is one of their best ever.
Hey man, we all can't be like you. I wish we
On the complete opposite end of the scale though, we have one of their poppiest and brightest and sugariest songs ever. Is sugariest even a word? It is not. But no, at number 5 we've got Rose Colored Boy, which, as a bit of a spoiler, is my favourite track from After Laughter. So this will be the final track from this album, but do not be mistaken that this is a very, very good album with lots of great songs, lots of colour, lots of vibrant instrumentals, lots of really cute and just so charming performances from Hayley Williams, and this track right here stands above the rest in terms of that. This is one of their best tracks in terms of how much character is coming through with Hayley's vocals. Really love the way she sounds on this track. It's so adorable and produces one of their best tracks ever. Pulling again from the 80s, that funky little pop era, the new wave era, really honestly reminded me at times of like Tom Tom Club, the band that did Genius of Love. I hear aspects of that in this track here. The influence is really welcomed. It's a fantastic song. I love it. Okay, number 4, and we finally made it to a track from Riot, which is a fantastic track, of course. Why wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it be number 4 if it weren't? We have That's What You Get. Love this track, and honestly, the version that they do at their Chicago live album that they put out might be even better than the original, but I am including, just original studio material here. I'm not including live versions, etc, etc, but I just want to point it out that that version is excellent, and this track overall is really good. I think, again, that kind of sarcastic, poking fun at the things that you do, the decisions that you make, the life that we live, is something that Paramore do well. And I think this track has got that energy to it, with the whole idea of, when you kind of fall for someone and you just let your heart out there, let your emotions out there, you get kind of knocked down. And it's that idea in a song basically, and I think it's really well written. I think Hayley Williams' vocal performance really sells what they're saying on this track as well, and this idea that we kind of put ourselves out there so much as if like we like it, like we like doing it, we like being hurt as much as we do, even though we don't, but it's this idea that we keep doing it anyway, and it's almost like we love the pain. And I think that's the idea of the track overall, which I really appreciate. I think it's well written, it's fun in that sarcastic type of way, and it's a great track.
What are you gonna do when nobody wants to fool with?
Okay, we're at the top 3 now, and we have easily one of their biggest songs ever. And for this list, this is easily their most famous song to appear on this list, which, yes, you might be surprised to know that Misery Business will not be on this list after I've just said that. It has nothing to do with the whole reason why they stopped playing it at live shows, by the way. I just don't think Misery Business is quite as good as people make it out to be. I'm just gonna say it. It's a good track, but probably a bit overplayed, and that's why it doesn't make this list. But Ain't It Fun, on the other hand, is really where they started leaning into pop music. I mean, this album has Still Into You on it as well, which was a huge track, and probably their poppiest song ever. But Ain't It Fun ain't too far behind on that list of pop songs, because this track here is really catchy. It just is super catchy, and that is why it makes it so high on this list. It's so replayable, it's so fun. I'm a sucker for gospel choirs as well, man. That little gospel ending to it, this track is fantastic. And again, with that sort of sarcastic nature that they throw in with their lyrics, ain't it fun, living in the real world, that kind of thing. They sell it really well. It has a bit of a bitter tone to it, I will say that, but I think it is a standout track from their discography.
Nothing compares to a quiet evening alone. Just the one
Okay, number 2 now, we have another track from Riot. We have Crush Crush Crush. I will concede and say that this being this high is probably a bit of a weird thing to see, because I don't think this is going to be high on many other people's lists. I really don't. But I don't know what it is about this track, man. But it just gets me every damn time. Every damn time I hear it, I'm just grooving along to this track. It is so fun. It's so catchy. It has so many like layers and aspects to it, like when it slows down and does the crush, 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 that whole bit, and then the chorus comes in with the drums. Like lyrically, there isn't even that much to say about this song. Like it isn't really anything superb in that sort of sense either, really. But I just think it's good. I just like it. I don't really know why I like it as much as I do. It might not even be many people's favourite from Riot overall, but it is for me, and I just have to put it at number 2. I think it's fantastic. And I just want to mention as well, the Crush Crush Faint remix, if you've never heard that, the Linkin Park mashup with Paramore, that is a great mashup there. I mean, it doesn't count for being on this list, but let me tell you right now, that is a great track. Okay, we've made it to number 1. Here we are. There's something you might have noticed about this list though. There aren't too many slow ballad type tracks on this list. In fact, there's none. There is zero. There is zero. And I've always found their slower ballady type moments a little underwhelming. I'm not that big of a fan of tracks like Misguided Ghosts or 26 or All I Wanted, The Only Exception. So many of those tracks from their discography that are considered a bit slower, a bit more emotional, they don't really quite do it for me. But my number 1 track has that element to it, but is brought to life by this extra layer of instrumentation that I think provides one of their best musical moments ever. And it is... yeah, it's Last Hope, the best song that they've ever done for me. Absolutely adore this track. I think the way it starts out so slow, and it's got the earnest feeling, the raw emotions that are coming through Hayley's voice, and then the way it builds throughout the track is just fantastic. I've said that word so many times in this video, I'm running out of words, but seriously, this is truly sensational from them. The way this instrumentation kind of builds and hits that crescendo on that final moment where she just kind of screams out, "It's just a spark." Ah, so good. And love the way the lyrics come together on this track as well. Yeah, just a really raw, beautiful moment from Paramore that they've never replicated. Like, they've never had a song like this ever, and it's never ever sounded this good, and it just has to be their best song for me. I think this is one of the best musical moments of their career, and I think coming close to it again will be very difficult to replicate. But even still, if they never do, we will have this track, and I think it is a really beautiful song. And that's it, that's my list. That is the top 10 Paramore songs in my opinion. Would love to see other people's, because I don't think my list will really translate to other people's who are big fans of these guys. But it's always fun to see what people think, differing opinions and all that. It's always good to see. So thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe, please check out my Patreon as well. Tell me your thoughts on my list. Do tell me your list as well. Have a good day and goodbye.